Good morning, everybody. So if you're watching, or if you have been watching the videos for the past few weeks, you'll know that we've been going over the fruits of the Spirit in order that they're written in the Bible. Last week we were talking about, all capitalization, joy, and that leads to what we're going to be talking about today, peace. And I gotta say that I was not looking forward to making this video at all because my AC went out of the house. So I was like, it's going to be super hot in here. And even if I recorded it somewhere else, and it was going to be hot when I came in here to edit it, and I wasn't looking forward to it. But I got a lot of peace today when they came and they fixed my AC. So it is done now, and it is a nice crispy 70 degrees in my house, so it feels much, much better. But peace, okay? So we're talking about peace. Something that I find very interesting about peace is that it's talked about a lot among mankind. People will talk all the time about how they hate violence and how they're always longing for this type of unity, but instead we always get this disunity and more violence. Now, why is that so interesting to me? Well, I'll tell you, because I've noticed that without God being at the core, then true peace is pretty much impossible. If you think I'm wrong, then let me remind you that man's natural instinct is that we are all evil. We have sin in our lives from the moment that we are born. So from mankind's first disobedience in the Garden of Eden, we have sin in our lives. It's mankind's curse for all time until God comes back. With sin, there comes many evils, and a lack of peace is included with that. But man also knows the need for peace, and that's why mankind is yearning for so much peace these days. I mean, I think God was our source of peace. God was there with us in the Garden of Eden, so when that was taken from us, it was almost like a part of us was taken away. That's why we long for it, in my opinion. There have been countless types of worldwide utopia attempted through various methods in all points of history, and all have and will fail. Why? Because only a true peace can come from God. Through a domino effect, we can see that God gives us love. That love for each other then will flood us with joy, which can lead us to a true peace that is not born of man, who is evil by nature, but instead of God. Through his great love, gives us the fruits of the Spirit in overwhelming abundance. Peace from God is something that is really perfect to talk about on Beyond Faith, because God's peace is truly beyond us. Now, I had to put that in there because it really is. God is perfect. There is no wrong that he can do. So therefore, God in his perfectness, or at least I think that might be a word, is 100% peace. And pause real quick, before anybody decides to try and ask me about the wrath of God, remember that there is this thing called cause and effect. God will not give out his wrath unless it is completely justified due to a lack of reverence to him, i.e. our sin. So God doesn't actively go out and just seek innocent people who could suffer his wrath. It's all completely justified when God deals out his wrath. So even though he does deal that, he is still 100% peace because it is completely justified. But I'm getting off subject here. But I want to take an example of how peace from God can really change somebody. And in that, look no further than in Acts chapter 8, Saul. Now, I've talked about this guy on here before, and I don't want to dive too crazy deep in here today, but just a little bit. Saul was not peaceful in the least bit. I mean, off the rip from when we're introduced to him in the Bible, it's talked about that not yet Paul, soon Paul, currently Saul approved of the execution of Stephen. It could be, I've heard it said that it's in theory that Saul was there helping in the stoning of Stephen. It's only speculation on that because it doesn't really specify for sure, but it does say that Saul approved of it. Saul in the Bible would literally go into homes, and this is all in I think Acts chapter 8 or 9, one or the other. Saul would literally go into the homes of people and drag people out of their house and send them to prison, or worse. And when I read of Saul, after first seeing him in the Bible, or first reading about him in the Bible, I just imagine this guy that is so unbelievably full of rage and malice, and he had just struck fear into all people that were around him. Or when anybody knew that he was going to be coming into the city, people would just cringe in fear. And I just imagine like one big bad burly dude. After his transformation, though, everything began to change. He was so overwhelmed with peace. Here I want to point this out, because remember in the Bible when I say he would literally drag people out of their homes, so I imagine at least that he was a fairly big guy, or at least somebody that could hold his own, in a fight or something like that. But After his conversion, the Jews began to plot, wow, I'm having a hard time speaking, began to plot to kill him. And he escaped from Damascus down the side of the wall in a basket that's read about. And what's so interesting to me about that is that, first off, Saul had a heads up that to what their plans were, so their element of surprise was gone, and in turn, he kind of had the element of surprise. So Saul could have taken this opportunity to strike back at them before they were even ready, but he doesn't. Instead, he chose to leave Damascus. Being sneaky in his escape, he was choosing a peaceful resolve. I love that. I just thought that was so interesting considering who he was just mere days before all of this happened. You know, that type of change, that type of change and that kind of peace just really can't just happen, at least not from a mere earthly perspective or for any earthly reason. That is God and his peace at work. I've heard of a phrase, and I'm sure many others have as well, about God, and he supplies a peace beyond understanding. I've heard that quite a bit, and it really is true. Only God can take the worst types of people, addicts, murderers, the downright evil, and turn them into some of the greatest and most beautiful testimonies that we have ever seen. And it really does display of, it becomes a display of God doing the impossible. Look into the mirror and think about who you were and what God has done for you since you've accepted him. And if you're not following God, then words can't even begin to describe what God is capable of doing in your life. It's truly beyond what you'll be able to comprehend, at least for this moment. Tough situations do come up in my life all the time, and it really does shake my boat. I do have bad days, believe it or not. Like my AC going out. That's tough. That's tough to deal with. I'm spoiled having AC. I like it too much, especially because of where I work. But recently, somebody told me that the more that I sit and think about the bad situations and how I can solve it, the more that situation can bring me down. So for the tough days, instead, we need to give it to God. Just sit there and think to yourself, God, this is stressing me out. You already know what the situation is, and you can help me overcome it because you supply me with peace. I am yours, and I give my situation to you. That should be something that we're constantly doing. In John 16:33, it says, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world. I think one thing that we often forget to do is simply just ask for peace. We get so involved with trying to solve our problems and stay in an earthly mindset that we often overlook what we need to do. And it's the simplest thing. Ask God. Currently, I'm going through some issues where I work, and it can bring me down. Totally wear me out, stress me out, make me feel horrible about the whole thing, about my day. But after I really can stop and get over my own self-pity, then I can ask God to help me. I did this just at work the other day, and it was a pretty unique feeling just when I sat down and I just prayed, giving my situation to God, and I could just kind of feel that weight get lifted off of me, and I just felt much better throughout the rest of my day. I went off my notes, sorry. God can help you in your situation, even if you are in the middle of it, no matter what it is or where you are. It can happen just like when I was at work and I was just praying to him, and I just felt that relief almost instantly after I got done praying. I've been reading a book recently about a pastor that dealt with all kinds of malice from people from his own church in his own home with his family. And yes, it did upset him. And the book that I'm reading, he's actually a very well-known pastor, but he's talking about how the church that he was wanting to help out, they didn't want his help just because they knew who he was. And he was in tears, and he was still sweeping the sidewalk because he just was surrendering the situation to God, and he still wanted to be able to do everything unto God. It was pretty amazing considering how his mindset of doing everything unto God, but he gave his tough situation to God. I thought that was so interesting. I may sound like a broken record here, but I know for a fact that I overlook asking God for peace all the time. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that does this either. That's why it becomes so important. You are a child of God, and he loves his children. In 1 John 3, 1 through 3, it says, "Behold, what a manner of love the Father has bestowed on us, that we should be called children of God. Therefore the world does not know us, because it did not know him. Beloved, now we are children of God, and it has not yet been revealed what we shall be. But we know that when he is revealed, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And everyone who has this hope in him purifies himself just as he is pure." Don't believe for a moment that that when you're asking God for peace, it's something that's going to be so small that he won't have time for it. God is everywhere. He knows all. He hears all. He sees all. And he does have time for you. If you're hearing my words right now, then you are already a testament to that, because God has created you. And God would not create something so perfect and so unique that he would not have time for. You are special to him, and it's time that you realize that when you ask him for peace, only he can, you are so special to him, and it's time that you realize and that you ask him for peace that only he can supply you with. Matthew 11:28 through 30. "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." These are the words of Jesus. And something else to keep in mind is that God never makes a promise that he can't keep. So when he says that he will give you rest, he will. So I think I'm going to end the video right here. I'm getting a little bit long on my times. But if you need peace, I'm going to say this one last time. If you need peace, just give it to God. Ask God, and he will supply you with what you need. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you in the next video.